LA schools shared a, quote, food neutrality video on the Instagram of LA Unified School District Human Relations, Diversity and Equity, or HRDE. Love those acronyms. The LA Parent Union is saying this video is telling students that their parents lied to them, that no food is better for them than any other, and that HRDE is working to undermine parents and hurt kids. So let's take a look at the video.
I got us donuts. Those are so bad for you. Oh no, are they moldy? I mean, are they poisoned? Are you allergic?
No, I'm just saying.
You're judging my food choices based on a false standard of health again, aren't you? Guilty.
Diet culture, fat phobia, and systems of oppression have created false hierarchies of food, and it shows up everywhere.
For instance, harmful thought patterns like earning food through exercising, or that dessert is the reward for the punishment of eating vegetables.
Remember that you do not need to earn food.
We are all incorrectly taught from a young age that our size, and therefore the foods that we eat, are markers of our self-worth. Moralizing food can lead to harmful relationships with food and disordered eating.
Instead of focusing on good and bad choices, try to approach food with neutrality in mind.
The only foods that are bad for you are foods that contain allergens, poisons, and contaminants, or food that is spoiled or is otherwise inedible.
Eat without guilt, regardless of what society says.
Well, I don't think this is great advice. No, all foods are not equal. You should strive for a balanced diet. Look, people shouldn't be starved because we're afraid of giving them not the best quality food, I guess, but yes, you should have vegetables and fruit and some protein and not just eat donuts all the time. Like, people's instinctual reaction to this is correct.
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought I was going to object to it more than I did when I actually watched it. So part of it is it's like corny and silly framing. Like when you're confronted with a huge pile of donuts, the obvious truth is that one should not consume that huge pile of donuts.
Right.
But there is obviously some messaging that really does confuse a lot of dieters, and I think has led to part of the kind of obesity crisis that we have in the United States, where people think that foods like bagels are healthier than something like a donut, when on average the donut has way fewer calories than a bagel because it's much less dense. And even that focus on calories is in of itself an issue, because it's also, you have to think about glycemic index and how long it's going to stay in your system and whether it's going to cause your blood sugar to spike and have a craving and eat a bunch of other things. So I do think that, frankly, they're right to say that we need to rethink a lot of what we've been taught about the food pyramid and all of this other stuff.
The food pyramid is a travesty. And you're absolutely right that guidance from government officials on what the right things to eat are have changed radically over our lifetimes. If the old food pyramid, it was, they wanted you to eat bread constantly.
Yeah.
There was like 9 to 11 servings. I think it was 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 servings of vegetables a day, 9 to 11 servings of bread. Like, that's at all minutes of the day. You should be eating bread. Are you not eating bread? Go eat some bread right now. It was crazy. And then we all got kind of carb focused, which I still think is a much more accurate portrait of health, that consuming excess carbs, especially if you want to burn fat or lose weight, consuming excess carbs is a really bad idea. I mean, that is basically true. So that was not good advice to shove bread down everyone's faces.
They told us that eggs were bad for us. They really fear-mongered about cholesterol without distinguishing between good and bad fats. And, all of that stuff is true, but it's also true that we continue to learn new things about the negative effects of eating too much red meat, et cetera, et cetera. Is it all red meat, or is it a lot of the preserved red meat, sausages, things like that? And look, it's a learning process on one hand, but also it's a lot of the misinformation came from lobbying efforts by the USDA, who were trying to get us to drink a lot of milk and eat a lot of bread. By the way, milk is something that most ethnic groups can't drink. It is not something that adults really should be drinking of any species, of any race. So, I mean,
Big cereal. No, it's true. No, that's not a joke. It's big cereal.
Big cereal convinced us to serve bowls of sugar to kids for breakfast. So, look, I think that this video is kind of corny and silly, and I think is overly precious. But I do think that what they're speaking to in good faith is a kind of misinformation that overly focuses on diet culture, which has never been about health, but about appearances, sometimes to the detriment of health. And you do get people thinking that they should eat certain kinds of foods, have bad results, and then engage in other kinds of disordered eating behavior. Disordered eating is frankly very common, especially among young girls.
Absolutely. However, this is fitting into the kind of new fat acceptance, that kind of thing.
But they didn't say anything about fat. like being overweight or anything like that.
Didn't they say it contributes to fat phobia or something like that?
Well, I mean,
pretty sure they said that.
Disordered eating and fat phobia, I think they do relate to each other. But fat phobia, are we defending fat phobia?
No, but no one should be shamed or anything or bullied or harassed or anything. And some people are overweight for reasons out of their control, for their own genetics, etc. But it is not wrong to politely strive toward a healthier society and to emphasize, to the extent it's possible or permissible or correct to do so in school environments, for instance, healthier lunches and exercise being a regular. I mean, that's not anything wrong with that.
I think that's right. And I don't know that the women in that video would disagree with that either.
They might.
I mean, the conversation about,
because I've had arguments with people like this, and they might.
Well, we can get one of these women on the show to come and discuss it with us. But this all comes as new studies find more children are developing obesity before leaving primary school than ever before, particularly among Black children and youth type 2. Among Black children, and youth type 2 diabetes jumped 77% during the pandemic. This Johns Hopkins study finds that this form of diabetes doubled among Black youth, nearly doubled among Hispanic youth, and decreased among white youth. So yeah, I think
we're much more overweight than we used to be. If you look at pictures from the 60s, the 70s, I was looking at pictures of people in the 70s because I'm going to a disco-themed event tonight, and everyone is so much thinner.
Yeah.
Healthier thinner. Not like gaunt, sickly thin, but healthy thin.
Yeah,
they're more active and they eat better somehow. They did something right.
Well, again, I think that's true. That has a lot to do with our kind of habits, the fact that we drive a lot more places. There's no riding your bike to school or walking to school or riding around because of people's safety concerns and things like that, warranted or not. We talked a lot about people's kids getting picked up by CPS because they're left unattended by the parks and things like that. But also there's been a huge shift in the food on the shelves that we receive. And so the composition of the packaged food that we receive, even if we make the same kinds of choices, there's a higher content of kind of harmful oils and a lot of obesity promoting materials in the food. That is the consequence of a lot of lobbying by these industries to get corn oil into basically any packaged product that you touch, not to mention the growth and size of antibiotics and the meat and all of this stuff that's happened for economic reasons. So it's definitely warrants some scrutiny, but I think that there should be a balance between how much we focus on kind of individual choice, because individual choices matter, but can't really be affected on a policy basis. And when you see holistic changes like you've observed from the 70s to now, I think it's worth paying attention to what kind of broader structural changes have caused that kind of broad shift to occur.
But I think it's also a shift just from, remember Michelle Obama, Let's Move, an emphasis on, that was one of her main initiatives.
People were furious about that.
I know people were furious about that. But it was an emphasis on healthier eating, better food in schools, to go from that to, I take it, these are people of a kind of liberal bent saying that, oh no, actually we shouldn't stigmatize different food choices. It's kind of a...
Again, I don't think that those are entirely the same thing. I take your point. It's cringe and slippery the way they did it. I wouldn't do it that way either. But I do think most people need to know. I see people making terrible dietary choices all the time, thinking they're dieting, getting a bagel, getting a muffin, and I'm like, just have the donut, girl. It's fewer calories. Those are real things to talk about, and those choices are made because of stigma on foods, not because of these kind of broader health science-based concerns.
Fine to stigmatize bagels. They're an overhyped food option. They're way too dense. You have to lather them with cream cheese to make them edible.
I kind of agree, but I'm from New York, so I can't say it out loud.
All right, more rising after this.